In Netflix's thriller You, Joe Goldberg narrates his life as a series of twisted attempts at love. He comes across as charming, a passionate bookstore manager or professor, but beneath the surface lurks a trail of brutal mistakes. As we trace Joe's character arc across the series, we'll pinpoint the key psychological and ethical errors in his behavior and translate them into actionable lessons for everyday life. This commentary will show how Joe's self-justifications and obsessions lead to ruin and how we can avoid those destructive patterns. Joe Goldberg's story spans 5 seasons of You, but one theme remains constant. Every time he seeks a fresh start, his romantic intentions give way to violence. In Season 1, a New York bookstore manager, Joe meets aspiring writer Guinevere Beck and quickly descends into stalking, manipulation, and murder in the name of true love. By the season finale, after trapping Beck in the basement of his shop, she calls him a sick monster, and Joe strangles her when he realizes she will never love him. In Season 2, Joe flees to Los Angeles to escape his past, but falls for a local chef, Love Quinn, using the same obsessive tactics. He even kidnaps a tech hacker, Will Bettelheim, to assume a new identity and secretly engineers his encounters with Love. Love initially believes he's her soulmate, but as lies unravel, he sees their relationship collapse under the weight of secrets and violence. By Season 3, Joe is trying to live a normal suburban life with wife Love and their baby Henry. Yet old habits die hard. He plots revenge on neighbors and again resorts to homicide, eventually killing Love when she threatens Marianne, a librarian he's caring for. Joe then abandons Henry, fakes his death, and escapes to Europe. In Season 4, living in London as Jonathan Moore, he investigates an eat-the-rich killer only to discover he himself is the murderer. His psyche has fractured, literally envisioning his own dark side, played by Ed Speleers. Even after acknowledging he's a killer, Joe can't break the cycle. He returns to New York in Season 5 as Kate Lockwood's husband, and, despite trying to rebrand himself as a philanthropist, begins an affair and spirals back toward violence. Throughout all seasons, Joe constantly reinvents himself to evade punishment, adopting new names and identities while leaving a trail of bodies behind. In the end, his journey highlights the blurred lines between hero and villain. Joe always tells himself he's the misunderstood romantic, but as one analysis puts it, his intelligence and self-justifications mask a deeply ingrained narcissism and lack of empathy that trap him in cycles of destruction. Joe's downfall comes from repeated mistakes in several domains: psychological, ethical, relational, and behavioral. Below we break these down with examples from the show. Psychological mistakes. Delusional self-justification. Joe constantly deceives himself about his motives. For example, he tries to convince Beck that all his crimes were for her safety and to make her life better, clearly deluding himself. In reality, he treats people as objects of possession, not real individuals. Mental health experts note that this kind of distorted thinking, believing one can justify extreme actions as love, aligns with traits of antisocial and narcissistic personality disorders. He lacks empathy and rationalizes violence in a way that no rational person would. Psychologists say real-world psychopaths or sociopaths actually must seem normal in daily life. Joe's behavior is an exaggeration for TV, but it still shows how dangerous self-justification is. Impulse and obsession. Joe never learns to control his obsessions. When he feels jealousy or betrayal, he acts immediately instead of pausing. An example is how he kidnaps and nearly kills Delilah, a friend of Love, because he fears losing Love. In Season 4, his psyche literally breaks. He hallucinates a friend named Reese who turns out to be his own suppressed murderous side. This psychic break is a dramatic sign that Joe's obsession blinds his judgment. In real life, letting emotion override reason, as Joe does, leads to rash, dangerous decisions. Ethical mistakes. Resorting to violence. Joe repeatedly takes justice into his own hands. For example, in Season 1 he lures Beck's boyfriend Benji into a trap and uses Benji's peanut allergy to kill him. He then burns Benji's body to hide the crime. He later bludgeons Beck's friend Peach to death and stages it as a suicide. In Season 2, he ambushes the comedian Henderson with a sedative and tortures him to death. All in the name of protecting others. These actions are inexcusably unethical, yet Joe convinces himself they are warranted for love or safety. As a lesson, no real-life goal justifies murdering or physically harming people. If you find yourself justifying hurting someone for their own good, as Joe does, that's a red flag to stop and reassess. Deception and blame. Joe is willing to frame and mislead others to cover his crimes. He plants evidence implicating innocent people, framing Dr. Nikki for Beck's murder or later Love framing her brother, and lies to authorities and friends. In Season 3, for instance, Joe and Love falsely frame neighbor Gil Brigham for an accidental death. Such ethical breaches, deception, scapegoating, covering tracks, not only hurt others but eventually ensnare Joe himself. In your life, remember, honesty and accountability matter. Unethical shortcuts, even small lies or secret schemes, can spiral out of control. Relational mistakes. Violation of privacy and consent. Joe repeatedly crosses personal boundaries. Early on, he stole Beck's phone to read her messages without permission. He hides news, like Candace being alive, and constantly spies on Beck and others. These invasions betray trust and autonomy. By contrast, healthy relationships require respecting privacy. In the show, Beck's trust shatters when she finds Joe's secret stash of stolen items, souvenirs from her home, from Peaches, even Beck's personal items. When she discovers these, she is appalled and calls him a monster. Manipulation instead of communication. Joe prefers deception over honest talk. For example, he manufactured his romance with Love Quinn by secretly arranging their meeting and later lied about his identity to her. He also enters Beck's therapy sessions in disguise to spy on her. These manipulations eventually destroy any genuine connection he could have had. A real-life lesson: trust is built by clear communication and consent, not by what-if games. If you ever feel tempted to manipulate a situation, as Joe did, remember that open communication would avoid misunderstandings and build healthier bonds. Behavioral mistakes. Lack of planning and oversights. Joe's worst moves often come from carelessness. The secret place, where he hid his kills in Season 1, was betrayed by a clue: young Paco exposing Joe's stash. en.wikipedia.org. Leaving a box of evidence for Beck to find was a catastrophic oversight. Real-world lesson: cover-ups rarely work. If you make a mistake, it's usually better to address it honestly than to try to hide it and have it blow up later. Fleeing from accountability. Rather than face consequences, Joe constantly runs. He fakes his death and disappears after Season 3, leaving his child behind, then assumes new identities in Europe. Each time, his failure to confront his issues directly only delays the inevitable reckoning. In life, try to own up to mistakes instead of escaping them. Facing problems head-on often means confronting uncomfortable truths, but it prevents the kind of cycle Joe experiences. Escalating impulsivity. Joe's actions escalate to extreme measures over time. Small lies and deceptions snowball into kidnapping, torture, and murder. His progression shows how one poor decision can lead to another. A practical takeaway: pay attention to small impulses, because unchecked emotions can escalate. For example, when Joe became suspicious of Beck's therapist, instead of talking it through, he planned to kill the therapist. Though he backs off last moment, in real life, cultivate self-control before letting minor frustrations turn into irreversible actions. Underlying motivations and pathologies. Why does Joe behave this way? The show offers clues to his psyche, and experts have weighed in. One factor is childhood trauma. Joe grew up with abuse. His biological father abused his mother, and young Joe shot and killed his father to protect her later. His adoptive father, a bookstore owner, locked Joe in a plexiglass cage as punishment. These early experiences of violence and confinement warped Joe's understanding of love and safety. In psychological terms, he likely developed deep attachment issues. The series hints that his unstable upbringing may have led to an attachment disorder rather than true psychopathy. Mental health experts caution, however, that Joe's extreme actions are exaggerated for TV. Kelly Scott, Tribeca Therapy, notes that psychopath is a loose term. Clinically, Joe most closely fits some traits of antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder. He shows a lack of empathy, willing to harm others without remorse, and an inflated self-importance, believing he alone deserves true love. As one article observes, Joe's charm and intelligence mask these traits. He is an amalgam of personality traits, taken to abnormal levels for the story. Despite this fictional exaggeration, the underlying takeaway is real. Unchecked narcissism and disregard for others' feelings lead straight into trouble. In short, Joe's decisions are driven by his warped mindset. He truly believes his violence is justified for love, and he fears abandonment due to his past. When Beck rejects him, he panics. Her freedom triggers the infamous "I'll double back for that" line, and ultimately her death. Viewers should see these patterns not as exciting heroism, but as warning signs of a deeply unhealthy psyche. In real life, even if you feel hurt, remember that violent or impulsive acts only cause more harm. Techniques like deep breathing, timeouts, or seeking professional help can keep your reactions in check. Interpersonal relationships. Real love is built on respect and trust, exactly what Joe lacks. Healthy relationships encourage individuality, not control. Trustworthy love, illustrated above, means honesty and respect, not the manipulation Joe used. Joe's mistakes show what not to do. He violated Beck's privacy by stealing her phone and lied to Love about who he was instead. Cultivate open communication. If you're insecure or suspicious, as Joe was about Beck's new therapist, talk directly rather than spying. If doubts arise, discuss them kindly rather than jumping to the worst conclusions. In short, be transparent with friends and partners. Mutual trust is fragile. Once Joe's deceptions came to light, like Beck finding his secret box, his relationship collapsed. We must do the reverse. Build trust by admitting mistakes early. Boundary setting. Joe repeatedly tramples boundaries, both others and his own. He held people prisoner, Beck in a glass cage, even Delilah in a vault, and invaded personal space. In real life, always respect others' physical and emotional boundaries. If someone says, no, or I need space, honor that. For example, when Beck told Joe she needed time, he should have backed off instead of following and trapping her. Similarly, respect privacy. Never read someone's messages without permission. Joe's iPhone hack is a textbook violation. Finally, set healthy boundaries for yourself. Know when your own emotions are pulling you too far and seek help or distance before harming yourself or others. Ethical decision-making. Joe's motto might as well have been, "The end justifies the means," and we see where it leads. In real life, hold yourself to moral standards. If you catch yourself rationalizing something bad as, for the greater good, stop and question it. For instance, Joe killed Ron, Paco's abusive stepfather, thinking he was helping the boy, but that murder crossed an irrevocable line. Instead of violence, real conflicts have non-violent solutions. Calling authorities, seeking counseling, or safe escape plans. Whenever you face a moral dilemma, consider the broader consequences and legal/moral frameworks involved. Discussing dilemmas with a trusted friend or mentor can also keep you on track. Mental health awareness. Finally, Joe's story highlights the importance of mental health. He never truly processes his trauma or gets honest help for his obsessions. In real life, notice if you're experiencing overwhelming thoughts or compulsions. If feelings of obsession, anger, or anxiety are pushing you to extreme plans, reach out for support. Joe had a path marked by abuse and never healed, so he simply acted on his worst impulses. You can do better. Talk to a therapist, counselor, or even a close friend before something terrible happens. Mental health professionals can teach coping skills that Joe never learned. Remember, seeking help is a strength, not a weakness. By applying these lessons, regulating emotions, respecting others, communicating clearly, choosing ethical actions, and seeking help, viewers can avoid spiraling down the same destructive path as Joe. We all might feel intense emotions or past hurts, but unlike Joe, we have the option to handle them constructively rather than catastrophically. Joe Goldberg ends the series still metaphorically caged by his own choices. His twisted romanticism repeatedly led to cruelty and heartbreak, not only for his victims but for himself. As one source sums up, Joe sees himself as a romantic hero, but his actions reveal only control, violence, and destruction. The takeaway for viewers is clear. Prioritize empathy, honesty, and self-awareness. If Joe had tried to talk with Beck or Love instead of deceiving them, if he had respected boundaries and managed jealousy, many deaths could have been avoided. In contrast to Joe, we should embrace emotional intelligence. By acknowledging our mistakes, learning from them, and seeking support when needed, we ensure our own stories stay healthy. In short, don't be trapped by obsession or delusion. Strive instead for understanding and accountability. That's how you won't make mistakes like Joe Goldberg.